Tonight's story does not begin with alarms, sirens, or sudden danger. It begins quietly, in places that were never meant to be noticed. In ordinary neighborhoods, on familiar streets. Behind doors that looked exactly like every other door. For decades, intelligence agencies around the world perfected a simple idea. The safest spy is the one who looks like no one at all. Not a man running through dark alleys, not a woman exchanging secrets in shadowed cafes, but someone who wakes up at the same time every morning. Who goes to work, who greets neighbors politely, who lives a life so predictable that no one ever thinks to question it. These were not temporary covers, these were not short missions. These were entire lives built on silence. The people in this story raised families. They paid taxes. They worried about careers, mortgages, and everyday routines. And all the while, their real purpose remained hidden, sometimes even from the people closest to them. In intelligence files, they were known by a single word: illegals, agents who operated without diplomatic protection, without official recognition, without a way home. Tonight, we will open one of those quiet archives. Not to chase excitement, but to understand patience, routine, and the psychological cost of living a normal life that was never truly your own. This is the story of spies who were never meant to stand out. Spies who lived normal lives and stayed invisible for years. In the world of intelligence, not all spies are the same. Some operate under diplomatic cover. They work from embassies, consulates, or official offices. If they are discovered, they are expelled. Their names appear briefly in the news, then they are replaced. Illegal spies are different. An illegal spy has no official protection, no safety net, no country that can publicly claim them. On paper, they do not exist. Their real identity is erased long before they arrive in their target country. Birth records are altered, documents are created, entire personal histories are carefully constructed, sometimes years in advance. By the time an illegal spy crosses a border, their cover is not a disguise. It is a complete life. They arrive as ordinary citizens, immigrants, students, professionals. They do not report to embassies. They do not meet handlers in offices. Often, they have no contact with their intelligence service for months, sometimes years. Silence is part of the job. Communication is rare and carefully controlled. A short radio transmission, a coded message hidden inside an ordinary letter. A brief signal that looks meaningless to everyone else. Most of the time, nothing happens at all. And that is exactly the point. Illegal spies are not sent to gather daily secrets. They are planted, they wait. Their true value may not be realized for decades. They are trained to blend into the background completely. To avoid strong opinions, to avoid attention, to avoid patterns that could be noticed. They are taught how to be forgettable. This kind of work requires a very specific kind of patience and a very specific kind of discipline. Illegal spies must resist curiosity. They must ignore opportunities. They must accept long stretches of total inactivity, knowing that a single mistake could end everything. For many of them, the most difficult part is not the secrecy. It is the normality, living a real life while pretending it is not real. Forming friendships that cannot be trusted. Building relationships that are based on lies. Raising children who will never know the truth. Some illegals begin their missions fully committed, ideologically motivated, carefully prepared. Others slowly change over time. The longer they live their cover identity, the more real it becomes. The original mission fades into the background. The fake life begins to feel permanent. And yet, at any moment, they can be activated, or recalled, or exposed. There is no retirement ceremony, no recognition, no guarantee of survival. If they are caught, they face prison or worse. Illegal spies accept this from the beginning. They are not trained to be heroes, they are trained to disappear. In the next chapter, we will step inside that disappearance, into the ordinary routines that made these spies invisible, and allowed them to remain hidden in plain sight. Most illegal spies did not live dramatic lives. There were no sudden chases, no whispered exchanges in dark corners. Their days began quietly. They woke up at familiar times, prepared breakfast, left their homes carrying the same bags, wearing the same coats, walking the same routes as everyone else. They went to work. Some worked in offices, some ran small businesses. Others held technical jobs that required patience rather than attention. They learned to complain about traffic, about weather, about minor inconveniences that made them sound human. At work, they were careful, but not distant. Friendly, but never memorable. Reliable, but never ambitious. They understood that excellence attracted attention, and attention was dangerous. After work, they returned home, stopped at grocery stores, waited in lines, paid bills. They became part of the background. Neighbors learned their names, then stopped thinking about them altogether. This was not an accident. Every habit was chosen carefully. What time they left the house, which cafes they visited, how often they spoke to neighbors. Even silence had a rhythm. Illegal spies avoided routines that were too perfect. Perfection raised questions, so they allowed small imperfections to exist. They arrived late sometimes, forgot things occasionally, made harmless mistakes. They learned how to be convincingly ordinary. At home, the performance continued. Some lived alone. Others married, sometimes to people who knew nothing of their real past. Some raised children who believed the cover story completely. Family life created credibility. School meetings, doctor visits, birthdays. These details formed a protective layer around them. But the longer the normal life continued, the more complicated it became. Every conversation carried a calculation. Every friendship required restraint. Illegal spies listened more than they spoke. They avoided political discussions. They avoided strong emotional reactions. They were present, but never fully open. Many of them kept their personal spaces deliberately unremarkable. No decorations that stood out, no collections, no habits that could be questioned. Even leisure was controlled. They watched popular television, followed local sports teams, adopted common opinions, just enough to blend in. At night, when the world slowed down, the contrast became clearer. Some illegals wrote journals they could never keep. Others memorized details they were forbidden to record. They lived with constant awareness, not fear, but vigilance. Years passed this way, sometimes decades. The mission did not move forward. There were no instructions, no messages, only waiting. And over time, something changed. The cover identity stopped feeling like a role. It became routine, habit, reality. Some began to forget details of their original lives. The language they once spoke daily, the places they came from. The life they were living became more real than the one they had left behind. And still, they continued, because stopping was not an option. In the next chapter, we will look beneath this routine, at the hidden purpose that existed behind every ordinary action, and the silent pressure of waiting for a message that might never come. Behind the ordinary routines, there was always another purpose, one that was rarely visible and almost never discussed. Illegal spies were not expected to gather information every day. In fact, most days passed without a single intelligence-related task that was intentional. Their true mission was readiness. They were positioned quietly, sometimes years in advance, in countries where future decisions would matter. They waited for moments that could not yet be predicted. While their lives appeared uneventful, they observed everything around them, not in an obvious way, not by asking questions, but by noticing patterns. They paid attention to small changes. Who moved into a neighborhood? Who left suddenly? Which conversations became more frequent? This awareness became second nature. Communication with their handlers was minimal, often dangerously rare. Illegal spies were trained to survive long periods of total silence. Months without instructions, years without confirmation that they were still needed. When contact did occur, it was subtle, a brief radio transmission at a specific time. A sequence of numbers read calmly into the night. A coded phrase buried inside an ordinary message. These moments were short and easy to miss. Mistakes could not be corrected. A radio turned on at the wrong time. A message acknowledged too quickly. A pattern repeated once too often. The risk was constant, but invisible. To outsiders, nothing ever happened. To the spy, every decision mattered. Illegal spies were also trained to prepare for events that might never come. Political crises, economic instability, sudden changes in international relations. Their value was not in action, but in availability. They existed as contingency plans. If relationships between countries collapsed, they were already in place. If communication channels failed, they remained. This waiting carried a psychological cost. Without regular tasks, doubt crept in. Was the mission still active? Had they been forgotten? Some illegals began to question their purpose. Others became overly cautious, withdrawing even further into routine. The danger was not boredom, it was erosion. Slowly, discipline weakened, attention drifted. And yet, they could not fully relax, because activation could come at any moment. A single message could change everything. Years of silence could end with one instruction. Until then, they maintained the balance. They blended in without disappearing. Stayed alert without appearing anxious. They were trained to control emotion. But emotions existed all the same: loneliness, uncertainty, a constant awareness that their real life existed somewhere else, frozen in time. Some illegals developed strict personal rules. Schedules that never changed, movements that were carefully limited. Others deliberately introduced randomness to avoid patterns. There was no single method, only discipline. The greatest challenge was restraint. They had access to information. They heard conversations, they noticed opportunities. But they were not allowed to act on them without instruction. Acting too early was just as dangerous as acting too late, so they waited. Years passed, governments changed. Cities evolved, the world moved forward. And still, the illegal remained, watching, listening, living an ordinary life, while carrying a purpose that could not be spoken aloud. In the next chapter, we will open a real case file, a life that followed this pattern for decades, and remained hidden longer than anyone expected. For decades, this life remained invisible. The man entered the country quietly, no announcement, no attention. On paper, he was an ordinary immigrant, a background that raised no questions. A history that fit neatly into official records. In intelligence archives, however, his name appeared only once, attached to a mission that was expected to last a lifetime. He was an illegal, trained carefully, patiently, without urgency. Before arriving, his original identity had been erased. A new name was prepared. A new past was constructed, including childhood memories that never happened. By the time he crossed the border, the transformation was complete. At first, his life followed a familiar pattern. He studied, worked, moved through cities without leaving a trace. He learned how people spoke, how they complained, what they ignored. Nothing about him stood out. Years passed. He found stable employment, paid taxes, contributed to the system he was never meant to belong to. To co-workers, he was reliable, quiet, slightly reserved. To neighbors, he was polite, predictable, forgettable. This was exactly what the mission required. Communication with his handlers was rare. Sometimes a short message arrived after years of silence. Sometimes nothing arrived at all. He was instructed not to seek contact, not to improvise, not to act independently. His value was his position, not his activity. Over time, the cover identity became more than a role. He developed friendships that felt genuine, habits that formed naturally, preferences that were never part of his training. He began to care about outcomes that had nothing to do with intelligence. The longer he lived this life, the more distant his original purpose became. And still, he continued, because leaving was not possible. Returning home would have required explanations he could never give. Exposure would have meant prison. So he remained. Years turned into decades. Governments changed, agencies restructured. Some of the people who had trained him retired, war disappeared. At times, he wondered whether his mission still existed at all. There were moments of doubt, moments of fatigue, but the discipline remained. Then, slowly, the structure began to crack. Not through a single mistake, but through accumulation. Unrelated investigations intersected, data was compared. Patterns emerged where none had been seen before. The life that had once been invisible became slightly clearer. He noticed small changes, questions that lingered too long, unfamiliar faces in familiar places. A sense of being observed without evidence. Still, he did not panic. Illegal spies are trained to accept uncertainty. When the exposure finally came, it was quiet. No dramatic arrest, no public confrontation. A conversation, an offer, a realization that the waiting was over. By the time the truth surfaced, the man had spent most of his adult life inside his cover identity. The country he was sent to infiltrate had become his home. The people around him were real. The routines were genuine. And yet, none of it had ever truly belonged to him. The file closed without celebration. There were no headlines at first, no immediate explanations. Only later did fragments appear, in court documents, in interviews, in declassified reports. A life built to remain unnoticed had finally been seen, not because it was dramatic, but because it had been patient. In the next chapter, we will examine what happens when a normal life, carefully constructed and carefully maintained, finally begins to collapse. The collapse of a secret life rarely happens all at once. There is no single moment when everything breaks. Instead, it begins quietly. Small disruptions appear where routine once existed. Questions are asked that feel slightly out of place. Procedures change without explanation. For the illegal spy, these shifts are immediately noticeable. A routine meeting is postponed. A document request feels unnecessary. A familiar process suddenly includes an unfamiliar step. Individually, none of these details mean much. Together, they form pressure. The normal life continues on the surface. Work still needs to be done, bills still need to be paid. Neighbors still expect casual conversations and polite smiles, but underneath, attention sharpens. The illegal becomes more careful with movements, more deliberate with speech, more aware of time. Every action is reviewed internally. Every choice is reconsidered. This phase can last weeks, sometimes months. It is often the most exhausting part of the mission, because nothing is confirmed. There is no message saying the cover has been compromised, no clear signal to leave or act, only the growing sense that the environment has changed. Some illegals respond by withdrawing. They reduce contact with others, they simplify routines. Others attempt to reinforce their normality, they become more social, more visible. Both approaches carry risk. At this stage, mistakes are rarely dramatic, they are subtle. A hesitation before answering a simple question, an unnecessary explanation. A moment of silence that lasts slightly too long. Investigators do not need certainty, they need consistency. Once that consistency weakens, the process accelerates. When exposure finally occurs, it is often controlled. The illegal is confronted privately, presented with information that cannot be denied. The conversation is calm. There is no benefit in panic on either side. For the spy, the moment carries a strange clarity. The waiting is over, the uncertainty ends. What follows is rarely heroic. There are interviews, statements, long periods of silence. The normal life dissolves piece by piece. Jobs are lost, homes are left behind, relationships end without explanation. What remains is not the original identity. That person no longer exists. And the cover identity cannot survive the truth. The illegal is left between two lives, unable to fully return, unable to continue. For intelligence services, the case becomes a file, a lesson, a closed chapter. For the individual, it becomes an ending without resolution. In the final chapter, we will step away from the case file and reflect on what remains when a secret life finally comes to an end. The story ends quietly. There are no celebrations, no dramatic revelations, no applause. The life that was built to be invisible has finally been seen. And yet, it leaves little trace in the world. Family members return to routines. Neighbors continue their days, unaware of the quiet sacrifice that occurred next door. Colleagues remember the polite, reliable person, but not the hidden purpose that once guided every step. The spy, now exposed, faces a new reality, one without the cover that had defined decades, one without the certainty of secrecy. What remains is the understanding of patience, of discipline, of living a life entirely in service of something unseen, without recognition, without reward. These stories rarely appear in headlines. They are not meant to inspire fame. They exist as archives, quietly recording the invisible work of those who operated in shadows. And yet, in silence, they teach a profound lesson. That courage is not always loud. That heroism can exist in ordinary routines. And that the human mind is capable of extraordinary patience. The archives close, the files are stored, and the world moves on. But for those who pause, who listen carefully, these stories remain. A reminder that even the most ordinary life can conceal extraordinary truths. This is the story of spies who lived normal lives. Invisible, patient, disciplined, and unforgettable in their quiet way.